Good evening and welcome to the point.
Good evening.
Before we begin, there are a few housekeeping points. We don't expect a fire alarm, but if it does, it's real, so please leave the building. Meet outside at the fire assembly point, and officers will direct any evacuation necessary. The meeting will be recorded and will be uploaded to the Council's YouTube channel. If any members of the public prefer not to be recorded, then do please contact a member of staff. If you're planning on filming or recording the meeting, then do please let us know so that we can ensure that you're not filming members of the public that do not wish to be filmed. And so I reserve the right to ask any filming considered to be intrusive to be stopped. The information is put on the Council's website. We will now move to the first item on the agenda, which is apologies for absence. James.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 4 apologies this evening, Councillors Buckley, Mann, Parker-Jones and Reynolds.
Thank you. I understand that Councillors Parker-Jones and Reynolds are ill, and I'm sure I speak for everyone when I wish them a complete and quick recovery. Next item is public participation. At this point, we have no public participation. Before we begin the formal council meeting, it's customary for the Mayor to give an overview of the civic calendar. And as you know, our last council meeting was mayor-making. And since then, my wife and I have attended over 70 engagements. The Deputy Mayor and past mayors have represented us when we were unable to attend, and we're grateful for their support. Recent events have included the community lunch organised by the Asian Welfare and Cultural Association, where 500 meals were served. I was happily relaunched the Points Cafe, which is now being run by a new catering company, the Beetroot Group. We were here only a few weeks ago for the Festival of Remembrance, organised by the Eastleigh, Chandersford and District branch of the Royal British Legion. And over the past 2 weeks, I have attended remembrance services in Eastleigh, Netley and West End. They were poignant, especially with the current events around the world. I was represented at services around the borough and in our twin towns in Villeneuve-Saint-Georges and Cornwestheim by the Deputy Mayor and the most recent former Mayor, and I thank them both for ensuring that Eastleigh Borough was represented at those ceremonies. My charity appeal beneficiary is the Eastleigh Citizens Advice. They have been supporting our residents for over 80 years and are needed now more than ever as we continue to see increases in the cost of living and the problems that engenders. They are available for a wide range of advice and include support with benefit claims and debt advice. A charity night has been organised in aid of my charity appeal, and the local band, the Burns Unit, will be performing at the Railway Institute on the 8th of December. Please come along and support them and me. Now I move on to declarations of interest. In respect of declarations of interest, councillors, you are reminded you must declare any personal or pecuniary interest in accordance with the council's code of conduct and standing orders. Do any councillors have any interests to declare? Doesn't seem so good, right. Councillors, next we need to confirm as a correct record the minutes of the council meeting held on the 22nd of May 2023. May I have a proposer and a seconder, please?
I'll propose the minutes, Mr. Mayor. Happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Gordon. Are there any questions regarding the accuracy of the minutes? No questions. Is there any debate? There is none. So we move on to a vote. Those for? Any against? Any abstentions?
That's unanimous, Mr. Mayor.
The next item is the Leader's Report. Councillor House.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and First of all, let's start off with a couple of introductions. So sat on my right, exhibiting towards the room and smiling, which is always a good thing. You look so glum this evening, colleagues. Please smile. That's better. Thank you, David. We have Dee O'Rourke and Pete Hopkins, who are both our new corporate directors. They joined the senior team with Sarah and with James. So, well, welcome into Eastleigh. Pete's been with us now for it's almost 3 months. I can't believe it's 3 months. And Dee's been not quite as long as that, but a while now too. So, which is good. They're gradually working their way around the council. So, if you do bump into them, do smile. Introduce yourselves. I do say to our staff when they arrive, James and I do like a double act with new staff, giving them a chance to find out a bit more about them and them about us. One of my lines to staff is, generally speaking, that the interaction between councillors and staff is really good, it's really friendly, it's really positive, we're like a team. If you walk into a room where there's both staff and councillors present, you can't really tell the difference between the two, except that generally speaking, the staff are a bit the councillors are a bit scruffier. And that's kind of like my rule of thumb, but clearly, actually, looking around the room, that's not generally the case this evening. So, well done, everybody, on that. Now then, what can I report on for everyone this evening? Local government finance nationally is now very much big news, with a number of councils effectively declaring bankruptcy as they can't set legal budgets and maintain service. It's a national disgrace that in what is still one of the wealthiest countries in the world, public services are in a downward spiral, despite seeing the highest levels of tax in over 75 years. Clearly, this can't go on, and I'm sure it won't with the change of government. But Brexit, COVID, trustonomics, and incompetence in central government have all very much taken their toll. The Autumn Statement takes more money away from local government in real terms, and the statement from the Chancellor looks set to reduce funding to local government again for the next 2 years if they get a chance in real terms too. And that's going to put things into a really difficult position for many councils. We hear of Southampton down the road for us, struggling for next year, Hampshire struggling for the year after, and many tens of councils about to fall off a financial cliff over the course of the next couple of years. But fortunately, Eastleigh is not one of those. And despite record inflation and interest rates, we still maintain a healthy commercial income protecting services. Our prudency is very much paying dividends. But it's also the case that the wider economic picture has, over the course of the last year, forced us too to look even more closely at budgets and services. And that work will have to ratchet up so long as inflation remains above the Bank of England target of 2% and interest rates remain above their long-term historic trends. Now, the jargon for some of this is continuous improvement, as clearly where possible what we want to do is make efficiencies rather than reducing services. But some of these, just as during the major government years and the Brown government years, will be needed too. Now, the local government sector has got a proud record of what's called sector-led improvement. That means we do things to improve ourselves collectively rather than rely on government inspectors. And so we had our roughly quadrennial visit from a local government peer review team last month. And these teams include senior staff and a councillor from a range of councils giving close scrutiny to us in a supportive way, interviewing tens of staff, councillors and partner organisations. Now, I've taken part in around 10 of these reviews around the country over the years, as have some senior Eastleigh Council staff, all in different places at different times. And you actually do learn a lot from visiting other councils, but they also learn a lot from you too. Our review was really useful. We'll receive our final report and publish it in the coming weeks. We've had a draft. I think I'm allowed to say that. We've had a draft. It makes good read. And although you can't pass or fail these tests, it would be fair at this stage to say that there are more plaudits than brickbats, no red flags, and a series of positive recommendations that we can take forward. And we'll start on these just this evening to prove how fleet of foot we are, with looking at changes to our audit committee in line with the recommendations of Tony Redmond's report on local audit to include independent non-councillor members, and providing a formal rather than ad hoc route for those rare planning applications with borough-wide impact to be decided with the recreation of the Joint Area Committee. Now, I think there's not that many people left who can remember the old Joint Area Committee. Wayne certainly can. Wayne's waving, Jane's waving, and Alan's waving too. So there's a few of us around. We had a Joint Area Committee back in the 1990s, just to show how long ago that was. But we expect the new one to meet rarely, and I'll describe it a bit later on. One area that the review team looked at, specifically at our request, was One Horton Heath. This independent review is part of the openness and scrutiny we give to major projects. Our ambition is there for all to see, making a real difference to meeting housing need, and doing so with an exemplar new community that meets our environmental and sustainability targets and delivers infrastructure first. The new link road from Burnett's Lane to Allington Lane is progressing well to open next summer. Massive new drainage projects are in place alongside waterway improvements that will benefit the Allington Lane area. And the next month, we'll complete over 200 boreholes for the ground source heat pumps for the first residential area, Lower Acre, at the southern end of Burnett's Lane, ahead of next year's start on home building. And if you haven't seen the boreholes being drilled at the bottom end of the site, it's worth taking a trip down to the bottom end of Burnett's Lane, and in the mud bath that's there at this time of year, seeing the borehole rigs, because they really are pretty impressive, and they're very much the way of doing things for the future. Now, as we move through detailed layouts of subsequent phases, with Quabley Breach and Upper Acre due to go through planning next year, it has become clear that the site as a whole can contribute up to an additional 500 homes. And this additionality will help reduce the need for new sites in our local plan review and other greenfield sites across the borough that will be saved, and we've put this in as part of our call for sites. Now, and for financial prudence, the business plan for One Horton Heath, I thought we'll come back to Cabinet and to Audit and Resources Committee next month, will only make an allowance for an additional 350 units. We are being very prudent with our financial forecasting. Closer to our venue tonight, at the Point, our new apartments at Postmark Place, on the site of the old post office at High Street, are on target, and we'll see new social and market lettings next year, helping boost Eastleigh Town Centre. Engagement on a range of other sites as developer or partner continue across the borough, including Eastleigh, Fair Oak, Hedge End, Botley and Netley. Finally this evening, Mr Mayor, I draw attention to everyone to Paul Bicknell and Tonya Craig's reports, with the first new lettings at our new temporary housing scheme at Bampton House in Chandler's Falls, and the really impressive work we've achieved in new homes for Afghan and Ukrainian refugees. Some of this comes with government funding support, where our message to government is very much that the more funds we're sent, the more we'll spend helping these vulnerable groups. We, of course, had the close down of one of the Afghan hotels in the summer, one of the best close downs. Tonya Craig's report will touch on this a bit later. And a massive thank you again to all the staff and partner organisations involved in this project, which for obvious reasons had to be kept largely under the radar. The Home Office used parts of our scheme as a national model for others, and this project is one of the very best things we've managed as a council, and I personally am especially proud of. 2024 is going to be challenging for all councils, even including ours. We're well set up to rise to these challenges, Mr Mayor, and I'd like to put on record my thanks to all staff for their hard work. Earlier this month, I had the pleasure to open our annual staff awards here in this theatre space and thank them in person. So I do so here for the record, Mr Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? It appears not. So we move then on to the statement of licensing policy. And councillors will now need to approve that statement. May I have a mover, please? Councillor Asman, and is that seconded? Councillor Welsh. Is there any public participation? It appears not. Any debate? No debate. Councillors, we now need to vote. All those in favour? Thank you. Those against? Any abstentions?
That's unanimous, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. We now need to review the to approve the annual review and updates to the Constitution. May I have a mover, please?
I'll move, Mr. Mayor, and I'll speak after it's seconded.
Is there a seconder?
Second.
Thank you, Councillor Corben. Councillor House.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. This is the techie bit this evening, which I know will excite one or two people. Maybe not as many as that. But it's the bit we just have to go through to make sure that proper probity is done with the way we do our business. And it's one thing we've actually got better on over the years. I think it has to be said, if we're honest, we got a bit rough and ready with how we managed the Constitution over a few years and didn't always document things quite as well as we could do. But Joe Castor and the team are doing a fantastic job keeping us on the straight and narrow with some of this stuff, and it's right that we document things properly too. So there are a lot of technical amendments to the paper that's in front of councillors this evening, which I suspect probably won't take a great deal of time. But I do want to just mention a couple of things in passing so that you're clear what we're getting ourselves into. On the second page of Appendix 1, we make the change to the Audit Committee that I discussed in my report earlier, which is to add a couple of independent non-councillor members to the team to fill skills gaps on the Audit and Resources Committee. And as I said again, this is part of a national review about how audit works in local government to make it more effective. And it's something we can embrace because we very much enjoy proper scrutiny of things that we do, and this will add some additional value. There will be an additional top-up place on the Audit Committee for proportionality purposes that we come to at the end of the next item. Also on the second page of the report, we're suggesting change to the Horton Heath Development Management Committee. When we set the Horton Heath Development Management Committee up quite a few years ago, we set it up because the only business it had to do was determine planning applications. But what we're now seeing, or we're beginning to see, is reports on other things that relate to that new community that would in the main currently be sent to Hedge End, West End and Botley Local Area Committee because the vast bulk of the One Horton Heath site is in that area committee area because it's part of the West End North Borough Ward. In time, there'll be one or two items that would previously have gone to the Bishopstoke and Fair Oak and Horton Heath Local Area Committee that relate just to One Horton Heath. But to consolidate the role and function of the Horton Heath Development Management Committee, this report and this change to the Constitution gives the Development Management Committee responsibility for those things that would otherwise have gone to the respective local area committees in the south or the north. So this does mean a little bit less business mainly for HEWEB, a little bit more business for Richard's committee, but it makes sense to locate things there. So things like street naming, other things to do with community development that are just for that site will end up going to the DMC in future rather than to the area committee. So at the bottom of that page, I talked about resetting up the joint area committee, and this section does that, and hopefully is pretty straightforward. A couple of pages further on page 6 of the report, we then talk about some changes to development management practice. We've had one or two instances recently, typically where a developer quite late on makes a change to a planning application that's already in the system. And the current rules we have for reference to committee mean that councillors can only refer things to committee if it's within the short window after the application is actually made. And that makes perfect sense because we don't want things hanging around and we don't want development management staff kept in the lurch knowing whether something's going to be decided under their delegated powers or determined by an area committee. But one or two instances recently have suggested that model doesn't always quite work, and I see a few nods around the room in saying that. So what we're now saying is that in that situation or other unusual examples, we'll give the option of the area committee chair or the relevant cabinet member that deals with the particular function, which could be anything from planning to the environment to health, the ability to refer items to committee. It's just an extra check and balance in the system so that just occasionally we've got the ability to bring things to committee that need to go to committee. As we keep on going through the report then, we suggest other changes around how those references can be made, and we're also then suggesting that changes to the reference to the Joint Area Committee that we're setting up can only be made if both effectively the head of planning and me as leader agree that something should go there. We're also going to add an extra phrase, and it's just about to come around electronically to you if it hasn't already, to say that 50% of councillors have also got the ability to refer things to the Joint Area Committee. The concept is that we really, really don't want things going to this committee, even though we've just set it up, because we want to make sure that 99.9% of planning decisions are taken by area committees where they belong. And it's only in real exceptions that something goes to this new committee. So we put some checks and balances into the process that say, but there both has to be a good planning reason and a good public reason for an item to go to the Joint Area Committee. So it stops either staff or councillors simply saying, this one's too difficult, we'll get someone else to take a decision. And that was what made the old Joint Area Committee back in the 1990s fall over, because we found that a controversial application in front of a local area committee, the local area committee would say, this has an effect on the next door village, we'll ask someone else to take the decision rather than us taking it ourselves. So this check and balance stops that happening unless there's a very, very good reason for this new committee to look at it. But the converse of that is there could just about be an occasion where, let's say, an application in the far south of the borough has an implication on the north of the borough. So that might not tick a box for either the head of planning or for myself, but if all the councillors, let's say, on one end of the borough wanted something to come to the Joint Area Committee, the ability for that to happen is now here by giving 50% of councillors the option of sending that to committee. That's come round by email, I think. It's pretty straightforward. So we haven't printed it on paper to save paper, and I'll move those amendments to the Constitution, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Corben, do you want to second the motion to speak?
Yes, I have. Yes, I'm very happy to second the motion. So I thought I had.
You had seconded. Do you want to speak? No. Right. Have you seconded the amendment as well? Thank you. Does any councillor wish to speak? Councillor Holes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to say that I fully support all the changes to the Audit and Resources Committee. I think they're going to prove to be a big improvement and a big help. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Holes. Councillor Tidridge.
Try yours. Sorry. Just really want to echo Councillor Hole's comment that it's a good thing, the change to the Constitution. I really do welcome the idea of independent members being on audit and resources. I would like this council to consider something else that I don't think necessarily needs a constitutional change, but something to consider, is could we stop scheduling committee meetings, passing a paper, and then that going immediately to a committee meeting several minutes later? Particularly with Audit and Resources, where if we have Cabinet happening straight after the Audit and Resources Committee, I'm really concerned that members may feel pressured to make a very binary decision, yes or no to a paper, as opposed to wanting to recommend changes, which obviously wouldn't be possible if that paper is immediately going to go to the next committee. What I'd like this council to consider is scheduling in a gap between a committee where a paper is considered of at least 2 working days, ideally 5, so that that committee can recommend changes, can recommend tweaks and improvements before that then goes to the next committee onwards. Obviously delegating permission to the chair and vice chair to sign off those tweaks. I just don't think that having a committee sign off a paper and that then going within minutes to the next committee for consideration encourages that Audit and Resources Committee, or indeed Policy and Performance, to make recommendations other than very binary yes or no. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tidridge. Councillor Broomfield.
Thank you. Just a couple of questions about the Joint Area Committee. Firstly, I'm assuming it won't meet regularly. Its remit seems to indicate it will only be called when necessary. So, and if I've missed this somewhere in the papers or something, I apologise, but will the chair of the committee be receiving a chair's allowance on a permanent basis, or just when he or she actually has some work to do? The second thing is, will it have the powers, assuming, and I see no reason why we won't vote for it this evening, and it can start work tomorrow theoretically, will it call in any outstanding difficult decisions? And I'm thinking particularly of Samson's Gym, which obviously was rejected by the EC Local Area Committee. So I wonder if that's one. And I suppose the third thing really, with the Joint Area Committee, is it in some way, possibly even remotely, a slight nod to the fact that the Local Area Committee system of planning is not necessarily the most effective, in that it very much takes away the opportunity for local members to actively support residents in campaigning against unpopular and damaging applications, on the basis that those local members will end up sitting on the Local Area Committee, which will be adjudicating on said application. So does the Joint Area Committee therefore give local members a better opportunity to campaign against unpopular and potentially damaging planning applications? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Broomfield. Is there any other councillor that wants to speak? Councillor Gomer.
Thank you. Just to say that I welcome these changes to the terms of reference for Wharton Heath Development Management Committee. I think it's really important that at One Wharton Heath we create a coherent new community and sort of not make that the victim of some arbitrary boundaries. So a bit more work for us on that committee, but I think broadly a very positive thing.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bicknell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I welcome these changes, to audit and resource, and also the creation of the Joint Area Committee. I think that actually may help us on the one or two occasions it actually might sit. I'm pleased to hear that the Joint Area Committee won't be generally doing LAC planning applications, because the whole point of having the local area committees is for those members to actually take those decisions in their local areas and not basically duck the issue and pass it on to somebody else to deal with. Where it comes to planning applications, it's a quasi-judicial role. You look at the evidence and make a planning decision accordingly. So I'm pleased that the JAC will not water down the LAC planning function that it has, because I think that's very important for local democracy. But overall, thoroughly welcome these amendments. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bicknell. Is there anyone else who wants to? Then I think the leader should respond.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. So a few questions there. Firstly, on Gin's question about timings of meetings. Generally speaking, both audit and resources and policy performance meet some way away from cabinet meetings. And that's for very much the reasons that Gin outlines. Just occasionally, and it is a rarity, we have a cabinet meeting on the back of either one or the other of those committees. And we mainly do that for efficiency, when there's usually a single item of business where members of the cabinet can attend the first meeting to hear the debate and understand what's going on and listen to what's happening and what's resolved at the panel or the committee, and then give it consideration at cabinet that follows thereafter. And usually agrees it in most cases. I think I could probably count on the fingers of, well, that hand, because there are fewer fingers, how many times cabinet hasn't agreed recommendations from either of those bodies. So it's a rarity that happens, and it's there for efficiency rather than anything else. And occasionally when timeliness means that it would be beneficial to have a decision on a similar time, not always exactly the same time, but on a similar time frame. And I expect this will happen from time to time, inevitably on major projects in particular. I say it's a rarity, and that's just the way that it is. I wouldn't think that puts any pressure at all on either of those panels to do business in a speedy way or a less considered way. If anything, the longer they spend on business, the less time cabinet takes with it generally. So I think I'd see that as a positive rather than a negative in terms of the overall efficiency of the organisation. Councillor Broomfield asks a variety of questions about the Joint Area Committee. How often will it meet? Pretty rarely, I would hope. I think there should be many occasions when we go a full council a year without a meeting at all. If we look back at the last 20 years, if we look back at the last 25 years, more or less since the Joint Area Committee was abolished, there's only been one occasion when a body that's superior in size or scale to an area committee that's needed to be called, which was the meeting on the airport, which clearly did have a borough-wide implication. And it was pretty difficult for the head of planning to get that referred to council. So that suggests that there may be one a year, one every 2 years, that kind of frequency, and it's only where something is of genuine impact elsewhere in the borough or of regional significance. And it's hard to think of many applications that would go there. I would, for example, I would see no reason at all why major new developments at the GS Bowl will be taken away from Hedge End West End Botley Local Area Committee and referred to the Joint Area Committee. If there's a major project in the town centre here, I wouldn't want to see ELAC not taking that decision. I'd want to see ELAC taking that decision. If there was a major retail proposal, as there was with Waitrose in Chandler's Ford all those years ago, when Chandler's Ford Conservatives were dead set against it, yet they were the first ones seen shopping there. I wouldn't want that decision to have been taken away from Chandler's Ford Area Committee. Absolutely not. It belongs there. And of course, it's interesting that Councillor Broomfield had raised the objection. It was the Conservatives on Chandler's Ford Area Committee that undermined the previous system, because they kept on referring decisions they didn't want to take to someone else to take because it was just too difficult and awkward for them. So we really don't want this committee to meet at all often. It may meet occasionally, but it'll often meet on maybe even quite small applications that genuinely have borough-wide significance. We'll see as time goes by. And it's for that reason that we're not at this stage suggesting an allowance to go with the chair or vice chair. There are options in the Local Government Act that allow us to pay a day rate for very occasional meetings. We're not proposing to do that at this stage. We'll reassess this maybe at the annual meeting, maybe in the annual meeting the year after next, for that matter, as to whether there's a need to do that. I suspect probably not. So it's for that reason also that applications like the application for much needed social housing in the centre of Eastleigh that were refused by Eastleigh Local Area Committee against officer advice won't be coming to the Joint Area Committee because the sovereignty sits with the Local Area Committee. The planning recommendation was very clear, permit it. I wouldn't be at all surprised to see the application come back at some point because the application recommendation was very clear. But it's the Area Committee that takes that decision, not the Joint Area Committee and not this council. And that's exactly the point of the Local Area Committee system. Now, I know Councillor Broomfield doesn't really like area committees, probably for the reasons I've explained already, because it means that he has to be prepared to take some decisions from time to time, but it's the fundamental bedrock of democracy in this council. It's one of the things that makes this council different from most other places. If we look at most councils, they have a small development management committee, typically with 5 or 6 councillors on it, and the local ward councillors get no look in at all. And I don't think that's democracy working at its best. I think that's democracy working at its worst. We see at Hampshire County Council, with the regulatory committee that Councillor Broomfield and I both sit on. It's pretty rare for a local member to actually be a member of the committee. Pretty rare. And members taking decisions on sites often have very little knowledge of what they are. And in a county the size of Hampshire, we then have site visits set up for sites, but half the committee don't turn up to them. So decisions are made almost entirely on officer recommendations with no local member knowledge, unless the local member turns up. And sometimes even when the local member does turn up, makes a very good case, as Councillor Craig did, about a waste transfer site in West End, very unpopular in the West End community and clearly a nuisance to neighbours. The regulatory committee just endorsed the officer decision because most of the councillors hadn't been there. So this committee will meet rarely, and when it does, it'll be because of need, but only if it passes the test of being supported for it to go there, either by both myself and the head of planning, or 50% of councillors. That's a pretty high bar to get across.
Thank you, Councillor House. We now move to a vote. We have an amendment to the motion, so we'll take a vote on the amendment first. I think everyone knows what the amendment is, so can I have those in favour of the amendment? Thank you. Any against? Any abstentions?
That's carried, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Now we go to the substantive motion as amended. Can I have those in favour, please? And against? And any abstentions?
Also carried, Mr Mayor, thank you.
Thank you. Right, we now move to appointments to committee. Following the approval of updates to the Constitution in the previous item, a number of committee appointments are required. Councillor House, please will you give your nominations for each of the following? Or I think you know, just say.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. I'll just do the whole lot in one go. Hopefully it should be easier. So the additional councillor for Audit and Resources Committee is Councillor Pretty. The councillors for the Joint Area Committee, in addition to the 5 local area committee chairs and the chair of the Horton Heath Development Committee, are Councillors Attrill, Reynolds, Couldrey, Pretty and O'Sullivan. The chair for the Joint Area Committee, Councillor Pretty, and the vice chair of the Joint Area Committee, Councillor O'Sullivan.
I have the mover. Is that seconded? Seconded by Councillor Corben. Any public participation? No. Any debate? Councillors, we now need to vote. All those in favour? Those against? Any abstentions?
That's carried, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. We now need to approve the Council's modern slavery statement. Have a mover, please. Sorry, looking hard in the wrong direction. Councillor Craig.
Direction. Move as written. Thank you.
Seconder? Councillor Bicknell, thank you. Any public participation? Any debate? Will we then move on to a vote? All those in favour? And against? Any abstentions?
That's carried, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. The next item is Cabinet Members' Statements. No? I've just skipped something, sorry about that. We next move to the Council's Local Pay Policy Statement. Can I have a mover, please?
I'll move this, Mr Mayor. This is a technicality. It has to come here by law. It's the kind of thing which really could be determined by Cabinet, but Government decided that it should come to full Council. There's nothing new here to really excite people, hopefully, but I'll move it.
Thank you. And thank you, Councillor Corben, for seconding. Any public participation? Any debate? So we now need to vote. All those in favour? Thank you. Any against? Thank you. Any abstentions?
Carried, Mr Mayor.
Right. Now we get to the Cabinet Members' Statements. Those Cabinet Members who have submitted a statement, is there anything you wish to add? Councillor Bicknell.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I've just got 2 very brief updates to add. There's some changes since I actually wrote and submitted my statement. I can confirm that in Bampton House that four people have now actually moved into Bampton House, which is absolutely fantastic. Councillor House has already mentioned this. Bampton House is a perfect example of local government solving problems and needs to do much more of this sort of thing. And for the LAHF project with the housing of Afghans and Ukrainians, I can confirm that 2 families have now moved into properties that Eastleigh Borough Council have bought. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bicknell.
Yes,
Councillor Craig.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. You said that you would indulge me in an update. I didn't actually want to put this in a Cabinet statement because I think it deserves far more than just being put on paper. And it's regarding the Afghan evacuee response that we spent 2 years promoting, and 2 years actually on the project, but not being able to promote anything about it because of their sensitivity. So I just wanted to read. There's a few pages, but I promise I will be as quick. It's just something that we can't let go, really. So in August 2021, the Taliban took control of Afghanistan and returned to power. Operation Pitting was the biggest UK military evacuation for over 70 years and enabled 15,000 people to leave Afghanistan safely. In the wake of Afghan crisis in 2021, emergency bridging accommodation was set up in hotels and other locations across the UK. On the 18th of August 2021, Eastleigh Borough Council were notified by government that they were likely to become home to a bridging hotel to support evacuees fleeing the escalating war in Afghanistan. On the 19th of August 2021, the council were informed that guests would be arriving the following day, and on the morning of the 20th of August 2021, the council began welcoming evacuees as one of the first 10 in the country. The council and local partners mobilised quickly to begin to support the first wave of evacuees with very little guidance on how they should operate. The council and the hotel agreed to work in partnership to deliver an outcome-focused service with care and compassion, working with individuals to be as responsive as possible. At the time, the emergency response team was led by Janine Pickering, ex-executive head of health and wellbeing, with colleagues drawn in from multiple departments and services across the council. Rather than a staged and orderly arrival, that's an understatement, events escalated very quickly, which tested the council and its partners' ability to think on their feet and improvise to deliver an effective welcome for a group from very traumatised people who had been brutally uprooted from their homes. Throughout August 2021, 72 evacuees, 20 families, arrived, all of whom were made to feel welcome to their first home in the UK. The council and hotel team worked with the British Red Cross in the initial days to meet their every need, from nappies to spectacles, and from loans for their own phones to providing a listening ear. A snack room and donations process was set up immediately, and Sainsbury's vouchers were sourced, whilst they were awaiting money from the Home Office, as most banks in Afghanistan were locked down and under Taliban control. Rooms were turned into playrooms for children and young people, and prayer rooms were also opened in the hotel. In January 2022, well over 160 Afghan evacuees of all ages had spent their first phase of the UK living in the hotel, with over 100 now having now moved on to permanent accommodation. As a result for the good work the council and partners were doing, in June 2022, the Eastleigh Hotel saw the arrival of 11 additional families, transferring from Southampton Bridging Hotel to one arriving from London Bridging Hotel, both of which were closing the resettlement scheme. In August 2022, the council saw the arrival of a further 3 families transferring from Tess Valley Bridging Hotel, which also closed. A year on since the evacuees arrived, Eastleigh was a principal host for Afghan evacuees in the region, supporting 150 evacuees across 26 families. To ensure an adequate level of support, a community development officer was recruited, and a member of the sports teamwork was seconded part-time to focus on health and wellbeing for evacuees through sports and exercise. Some examples of support provided from the council were 65 school bags sourced through School in a Bag charity. Over 1,000 tickets were gifted from the Aegeus Bowl for evacuees to attend cricket matches and fireworks. Family activity days held for Easter, Halloween and Christmas. Arranged free fun days during summer holidays with transport and food at Itchen Valley Country Park. Supported trips to the local park, Mela, festivals and country parks. 2 circus visits. Organised adult education, CV and transferable skills workshops as delivered by Education Development Trust. Volunteers opportunities sourced by the women to be involved to build in their own experience for job future opportunities. Basic law workshops delivered by EBC Safeguarding Lead. Presented an EBC employment opportunity to an evacuee and supported him to apply, which he was successful. Funded weekly transport for evacuees to attend the mosque for prayer. Involved in planning and implementation of ESO, IT skills and provision of numeracy skills. Every family had a Christmas bag of presents which was made up from some of the community donations as well as purchases from gifted vouchers. Every child had a gift to open on Christmas Day. Key relationships were built with community partners and services such as local colleges, Clear, Rope Walk Community Garden, Women Integration Group, just to name a few. These relationships provided further community integration opportunities. Every family had access to a laptop. Every expectant mum was supplied with the new and pre-loved baby items from baby necessities. All vacuees were offered a 3-month free membership at Places Leisure and were offered support to sign up in this offer. Wealdon Leisure Centre to offer a free membership for the month of December, with many taking up this offer. And IED celebrations were with a party at the hotel which included food, henna and gifts. By May 2023, the government announced new plans for permanent end to the bridging accommodation, with all existing bridging hotels set to close by the end of August 2023. On the 2nd of May, Eastleigh Bridging Hotel became one of the first hotels where legal notices to quit were served to 91 evacuees, which was 18 families. Guests had 3 months to find accommodation and leave the hotel. Whilst the responsibility was primarily on families to find their own accommodation, Eastleigh's wraparound support team were faced with an immense challenge of supporting all 18 families to find their own accommodation. The council made the decision to increase the support available to families and bring in housing and homelessness teams who brought with them a wealth of experience, knowledge and skills, all of which supported families to find accommodation. Meanwhile, other partners, such as Department for Work and Pensions and Home Office liaison officers, increased their on-site support presence, which created a collaborative task force to support the families. Although the government had made various funding streams available to support with move-on costs, such as removals, deposits, rent and furnishings, this funding could only be applied for once the family had left the hotel. This funding was needed immediately to enable families to leave, so thanks to Hampshire County Council, who agreed to support with moving costs for every family as part of the wraparound support, the council were able to access funding to do this. Eastleigh's Bridging Hotel closed on the 1st of August 2023. Eastleigh were the only area nationally to close early and were also the only area to have no one without long-term accommodation offer on hotel closure. Eastleigh is seen as one of the most successful bridging hotels in the country, which was only made possible by the tireless effort and passion of council staff and local partners. A total of 37 council officers dedicated their time to support families, and 37 partners across a range of different sectors, including Hampshire County Council, Living Well Partnership, King's Community Church, Radio Taxis, the DWP, the NHS, No Limits, the British Red Cross and Local One Community Charity, English teachers, borough schools and the Ageas Bowl, sports clubs, sewing groups and the local mosque. Thank you to every single person who dedicated their time and support to the families and did so with empathy and compassion. Whilst it is important to reflect on the incredible support that has been delivered and the positive impact this has had on families that we have supported, let us not forget the circumstances in which this support was needed. Families were uprooted from their homes, separated from loved ones, lost loved ones, and experienced unimaginable trauma. Whilst our support should never have been needed in the first place, we can reflect on the outcomes and feel confident that Eastleigh delivered the best support we could for these families and made a positive contribution towards them resettling their life in UK. We have held a thank you to officers and partners which were closely involved in the project, and I would again like this council to thank formally the individuals who went above and beyond in their support, especially what they heard, saw and shared with these families. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Craig. Councillors, are there any questions on either of those statements? Councillor Garton.
It's not really a question, Mr. Mayor, thank you. It's just to say what an amazing achievement by our staff and the work that they did with the Afghan families. It would appear that in other parts of the country, perhaps the support wasn't as good as the support given by our staff, and I think they should be thanked, because I often think, you know, if you put yourself in someone else's shoes, that somebody would be there to support you, given those same circumstances. So our staff should be applauded for what they did. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Garton. Any other questions even? Thank you. Okay, I think we then...
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, can I just come back to Cynthia on that one?
Yes.
The officers involved, we did have a thank you and celebrated separately with them because they absolutely did an amazing job. So amazing, actually, that the things that we set up here in Eastleigh were actually rolled out throughout the whole of Hampshire, and many of the project bits, the setups and things went national. So it was our staff that set that up and were so amazing that it rolled out nationally. So they have been thanked. We had a separate thank you for them. But it's just I've had to stay quiet for obvious reasons, and I didn't want to any longer.
Thank you. I think then we move on to motions. The first motion is a motion on the ban of the sale of single-use vapes and free samples, and I invite Councillor Jarvis to move her motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's important to stress that this motion is not about being anti-vaping. Vaping has been shown to be less harmful than smoking and also has a place as a tool for adults who are trying to give up smoking. However, there are concerns locally about the increase in children and young people who are trying vaping and about the environmental impact of disposable vapes on our rivers and wildlife. For those who may not be aware, a disposable vape is a single-use plastic device containing a lithium battery. They're commonly used for a day or so before being discarded, and because they're designed as one unit, the batteries cannot be easily separated from the plastic shell and other materials, which makes them difficult to recycle. This summer there was a fire in an Eastleigh Borough Council bin lorry caused by a single-use vape. In fact, last year across the UK, there were more than 700 fires in bin lorries and recycling centres caused by electrical batteries, including the lithium-ion batteries commonly used in disposable vapes. And as the Chief Fire Officer of Hampshire Fire told me last week, disposable vapes are also a concern because of the risk of house fires. Although selling vapes to under 18s is illegal, it is not currently illegal for retailers and marketing firms to hand out free samples because vapes are not covered by the tobacco advertising rules prohibiting free distribution, as they are not considered a tobacco product. Research by the independent public health charity Action on Smoking and Health, ASH, has found that in 2023, 69% of 11 to 17-year-olds who had tried vaping were using disposable vapes. That's up from 52% in 2022 and 7.7% in 2021. Local charity Youth Options have confirmed that there has been a marked increase in the number of young people using vaping products and notably disposable products, those that are flavoured and colourfully packaged across the borough. It should be noted that their team of youth support workers are regularly reporting engaging with young people about these vaping products and having conversations around their usage, both at youth club and outreach sessions in the community. The environmental impact of single-use vapes is also hugely concerning. 14 million single-use vapes are sold in the UK every month, and over 1.3 million are ending up in landfill every week. They are littering our streets, our countryside, and if they end up in our waterways, they can have devastating consequences for our wildlife. The RSPCA has called for a ban on disposable vapes and points out that animals such as birds, fish, and marine mammals often mistake vapes for food and can suffer from internal injuries or even death as a result. These hazards also apply to young children. The Marine Conservation Society is also calling for a comprehensive ban on single-use disposable vapes. While the government is currently running a public consultation on smoking and vaping, there is a concern that any measures to be proposed in their bill next year will not go far enough, and that they are taking far too long on this. This summer, the Local Government Association called for the government to ban the sale and manufacture of disposable vapes by 2024. With France rolling out a ban this December, there is a risk that as markets close, disposable vapes will flood into the UK. Of course, while we're waiting for the government to act, there should be proper collection points for disposable vapes. But what's really needed is an immediate ban on the sale of single-use vapes and free samples, mandatory age of sale signage on vaping products, and an end to toy-like advertising targeted at children. So I hope you will support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jarvis. Councillor Gomer, do you wish to speak now, or you can...
I reserve my right, please.
Thank you. so we open this debate. Is any councillor want to say to add to the debate? Councillor Kyrle.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Very much agree with everything that's outlined in this motion, for all of the reasons that have been outlined. I just would like to add that I find it very hard to believe that disposable vapes, in effect, aren't treated in the same way as tobacco products, given the fact that the majority of them, as far as I'm aware, do actually contain levels of nicotine, which is obviously clearly highly addictive, and obviously can lead potentially to users or whatever moving on to cigarettes or cigars or whatever, etc., other tobacco products, albeit that on the converse, obviously, it is known, obviously, that clearly it can help people who are addicted, shall we say, to tobacco products to wean themselves potentially off those by using them. Absolutely agree with the elements in here about the attractiveness, if you like, and the marketing to younger people. But what I would ask potentially is that if we could add, I'm not necessarily saying that we should amend this, but if we could add that vapes should be treated exactly the same with regards to government legislation with regards to other tobacco products, and that they should be banned from view within retail outlets, the same as other tobacco products are, behind screens or whatever. Quite often you'll walk into supermarkets or corner shops or whatever, and tobacco products are actually behind, they have to now be screened or whatever away from views of people, whereas vapes, unfortunately, in a lot of cases are literally right in front of your eye line, right in front of your face. Also, I do think that potentially there should also be a reduction in the sort of flavours, etc., that are available, etc. Clearly, it is a smoking product. Clearly, I know that science is not necessarily agreed on this as to the actual effects of it, but clearly it isn't good for anybody to be breathing in these kinds of things over a prolonged period of time, and clearly young people shouldn't be doing that at all, so because of the harm potentially in later life, etc. So again, I say don't want to amend, but I'd hope that these things would be taken on board, and certainly in the letters of the Secretary of State, whether or not these things should be treated as tobacco products, and therefore, and further, that they should also be prevented from view from younger people, being encouraged to take up vaping. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kyrle. I take it you're not moving an amendment to that effect.
Well, I mean, I could do, but I don't want to. I don't want to. I absolutely agree with everything in here, but I have raised these issues before. We had this at the County Council, etc., and the sentiment, I think, was also was shared of the same sort of thing about banning it from view as well.
Thank you. Councillor Broomfield.
Thank you. Actually, the moment's passed. I'll leave that one. Thank you.
Councillor Holes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think, first of all, this has clearly been very thoroughly gone into, and I thank Councillor Jarvis and Councillor Gomer for bringing it to us. The issues that I've come across, first of all, are people just dumping these single-use vapes on pavements and on grass and people's front gardens, etc. People not appreciating the dangers of them, not just to their own health, but to the environment, etc. And we've heard quite clearly in this motion what the dangers are. The second thing I wanted to mention was the fire that took place in Eastleigh. It was actually in our ward, and there were graphic photographs on Facebook at the time, and the fire brigade clearly came out and said it was a single-use vape. But there were people on Facebook actually calling it absolute rubbish and being made up, and there was no issue with single-use vapes, and it couldn't possibly be a battery, lithium battery from one of those that caused the fire. So clearly there's ignorance involved. And one of the key things in this is education. It took 500 years, or the best part of, for us to appreciate the dangers and damage that tobacco could cause, and to do something about it. Vapes have only been around a few years, and I would hate to think that government doesn't get on top of this. I fully support this, and the education of people into the dangers of just leaving them lying around, putting them into their black bin waste or whatever, is really important to get across, apart from all the other messages that are in this motion. So I fully support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Holes. Is there... Councillor Craig, ladies first. Yes, I have to say, there's absolute unison.
That was almost like we were puppets then. We both went up at the same time. I just wanted to add, Steve touched on it a bit about education. Most vape shops do now have somewhere where you can dispose of the disposable vapes in the shops. And I think maybe we should do a bit of a promotion on this to make sure that the vape shops are actually promoting it to their customers, if they are going in and buying the disposables, to bring them back when they buy their next lot. It's very easy to be done. So it's a journey. They're going there anyway to buy their new ones. Why not take the old ones with them? So just it's not an amendment to the motion, but something that we may add to it.
Thank you, Councillor Corben.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was going to make a similar point, actually, but I will just say that in 2023, I find it amazing that we're having a conversation about something that could do so much damage. So I congratulate Councillor Jarvis and Councillor Gomer to bringing this to us. This is a common sense motion, and it's actually one that I think the powers that be, the government, are a little bit behind. It may only be a few years that we've had vapes, but it seems to be quite a long time, and to still be in this position now, it does seem very, very odd. So whatever we can do to bring some influence or to raise the profile of the discussion, I think is very worthwhile. I'll be very happy to support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Corben. Councillor Bicknell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, happy to support this motion, and I agree with everything that's been said wholeheartedly. I hope that the government do get on and do something about this, and I hope the fact that they actually received £350,000 from the CEO of Supreme 8 Limited, which is a vaping company, doesn't actually influence their decision. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bicknell. Councillor Pretty.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Fully support the motion. I think it's vital that we take a stand on this. I'm going to make the point that disposal points being within vape shops. I was listening to debate today about it. One of the manufacturers was saying he encourages all. Sorry, it's my voice, I think. That he encourages all of their distributors to have a recycling point. Secondly, that many of these disposable vapes have capacity within the lithium battery to offer an effective surface for 3 or 4 times as much. Not single use, but it could go on for 3 or 4 times. So it seems rather foolish that we have a single-use vape that's got the capacity to be used 3 or 4 times longer if it had the fluid within it, and that would reduce the number of potential thrown away vapes considerably. But I think we need to encourage in whatever way we can that young people are discouraged from using vapes, and that the disposal points are well signed. And sorry, I've had treatment today and it's leaving me croaky, and to encourage their use, but fully support the motion. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Councillor Pretty. Is there any further debate? Councillor Kinloch.
Sorry, I couldn't let a vaping thing pass without comment. I agree with all the comments that have already been made about the single-use disposable things, but we have to highlight the fact that there is an increasing body of evidence coming out of the States in particular about the effects of inhaling superheated chemicals in children. There are people with pneumonitis, a long-term lung condition, being in hospitals and having long-term conditions. It's happening younger and younger. The younger you are, the more damage it does. And unfortunately, we've all probably been through a school run where you go through a cloud of vaping stuff. And we should be actively discouraging that. In the same way that we used to discourage smoking, we need to be doing the same, and having any company that kind of advertises and does it specifically for children, which appears to be happening, shouldn't be supported. So yes, I agree with all the comments about reusable, or sort of not disposing of things, or disposing of them properly, and making sure that we're not using the finite resource of lithium to essentially allow children to damage their lungs. So I fully support this motion, and I congratulate Councillor Jarvis and Councillor Gomer on bringing this forward.
Thank you, Councillor Kinloch. Councillor Gomer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as Councillor Jarvis says, this is not a motion against vaping. As we've heard, vaping is a useful tool to support adults who wish to stop smoking, and it is perfectly reasonable for competent adults to put what they wish into their bodies. And I would certainly not wish to see vaping pushed into the same disastrous regime as substances like cannabis, nitrous oxide, or other illegal drugs, a regime that increases harm in our communities and prohibits sensible public health initiatives that would save lives. This is, in fact, a motion about packaging and marketing, which doesn't sound as sexy, does it, as drug policy. It would address the disastrous impact of disposable lithium-ion batteries and single-use plastics, and it would protect our children while they mature into adults who can take measured decisions for themselves. So as Councillor Kyrle and Councillor Kinloch said, the health impacts of vaping are understudied, but there is a growing evidence that vapes can have negative effects. It is right to be cautious so far as children are concerned. The way these vapes are built makes them dangerous and polluting. They're not dangerous simply to wildlife, though they are, but also to our own council staff in refuse collection. And Councillor Holles rightly reminds us of local fires caused by them. As Councillor Corben says, this would be a common sense regulation to reduce the environmental externalities of a packaging in a way that actually needn't infringe upon anyone's reasonable liberties to engage in vaping. As Councillor Craig and Councillor Pretty have said, other measures actually, such as promoting collection schemes, are viable in the shorter term, and I would like to see those too. But in a sense, it is shutting the stable door after several of the horses have bolted. Non-disposable vapes are readily available, and a sensible ban with a moderate lead-in time would give the vaping industry the gentle nudge that it needs to innovate some less damaging alternatives that, for example, can use the full capacity of a rechargeable battery. And likewise, the addressable market of consenting adults is large enough that banning marketing to children should have no effect on the viability of the legitimate industry. So I support this motion, as clearly many colleagues do, and I hope everyone else will too. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gomer. Does anybody else want to say anything? Right, we move to a vote. Can I have those in favour of the motion? And those against? And any abstentions?
That is carried, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. So we move on to the next motion. And I invite, which is about NHS dentists in Eastleigh, and I invite Councillor Jarvis to move her motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, ironically, I'm currently trying to get an appointment for a filling because one fell out a couple of weeks ago, and I don't know if you have tried to get an appointment with an NHS dentist in Eastleigh recently, but it's a challenge even to get through on the phone. The NHS Services website currently shows that very few dental practices in Eastleigh or the surrounding area are accepting new patients, not even children. And according to research commissioned by the Liberal Democrats from the House of Commons Library, 48.7% of children in Hampshire had not been seen by an NHS dentist in the year to June 2023, and over 62% of adults in Hampshire have not been seen by an NHS dentist in the past 2 years. The fact is that Eastleigh, similarly to the rest of the country, is facing an acute NHS dental crisis. Access to NHS dental appointments is increasingly limited for children and adults, which creates additional pressures in other parts of the health service. There are particular concerns about the lack of dental care for children and the impact this can have on the rest of their lives. Every parent knows how important it is to ensure that their children can see a dentist when they need to. Leaving children in pain can disrupt their eating, sleeping, and learning. However, tooth decay is currently the #1 reason for hospital admissions for children aged 6 to 10. That's staggering. Residents raise the issue of accessing local NHS dental appointments with me all the time. Just last weekend, a couple told me their appointments have been cancelled and rearranged countless times due to staff shortages, and another resident who had a dental emergency told me they had to ring round loads of dentists before they finally found one who could fit them in for treatment, but by that stage, they were in so much pain they had no choice but to pay for private dental care. According to the British Dental Association, government spend on general dental practice in England has been cut by about 1/3 in the last decade in real terms. In July, the Health and Social Care Committee concluded its inquiry into NHS dentistry, describing the state of the service as unacceptable in the 21st century and set out recommendations to government for real urgent reform. But the government's response to the inquiry has been overdue since 14th of September 2023. The Conservative government has shown a total disregard for every aspect of our health service and its people in Eastleigh, Hampshire and across the UK who are bearing the brunt of it. It's important to acknowledge our gratitude to the dentists, doctors and staff across Eastleigh who continue to strive to provide the best possible dental care for patients despite the pressures of working in a dysfunctional, target-driven system. The government should be implementing an emergency rescue plan for NHS dentistry, including spending any funding that has gone unspent in recent years to boost the number of appointments, as well as the removal of VAT on children's toothpaste and toothbrushes. So this motion calls on Council to write to the Health Secretary, outlining concerns over local provision and access to services and urgent reforms which need to take place, including boosting spending and implementing an urgent programme to recruit and retain more NHS dentists and a wholesale reform of NHS dental contracts to make it more financially sustainable and better structured for dental practices to remain in the NHS system. Please support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jarvis. Councillor Bardia, do you want to speak now or do you want to speak?
I reserve my right to speak.
Thank you. Any debate? Councillor Garton.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. As far as dentistry is concerned, we seem to be going backwards. Growing up as a child, it was a given that you could go to the dentist. You didn't have to pay. It was all free on the National Health. But at the moment, we seem to have a two-tier system. The haves and the have-not, those who can afford to pay and those who can't. There are families that would dearly love to be able to afford for their children to have dental treatment, but some families who work really hard can hardly pay their mortgages or feed their families. So I think it's disgraceful that children, young people, cannot go and see a dentist free of charge. It's just ridiculous. Also, with regards to older people, dentists have picked up on mouth and neck cancers, where it's not just about your teeth, it's about where they look at your mouth, feel your neck, and things like that. And those have been on the rise. So overall, it is about dentistry and your teeth, but it includes a lot more than that. Thank you. So I support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Garton. Councillor Kyrle.
Thank you, Chair. I was also going to just pick up on the point that Councillor Garton said, actually, that certainly when I was younger, which I know was now a few years ago, thank you, not that many years ago, I may have, can I remember? Well, no, I can't, that's the no, anyway. It used to be sort of, in effect, maybe not cradle to grave, but it certainly was when you were a younger person starting school, etc., where you did get the health visitor come in, and they used to sort of teach people how to, brush their teeth and the reasons why you did all that kind of stuff. They may still do that, I don't know, I've not heard of it. You used to get the dentist used to come to the school, so that everyone had the opportunity to go and see a dentist or whatever, NHS dentist, to have a look at what's going on, all that kind of thing. And you used to get referrals or whatever to orthodontists if you need orthodontic treatment, all that kind of thing. And it has absolutely, as Councillor Garton said, been a complete rollback in effect, really, where, you know, I think certainly my dentist practice or whatever just sent me a letter saying we're going private. That's it. If you don't like it, basically disappear somewhere else. And then you then try and find an NHS dentist anywhere that's offering any appointments whatsoever, and you have to travel significant distances potentially to get that, if you can actually get one. So it is a complete rollback, and what my real concern is, as Councillor Garton said as well, is the fact it isn't just about dental care in effect, it's about all of that, the whole of that system, if you like, and that they can detect all sorts of other issues potentially at an early stage, and therefore there is not that ongoing impact potentially in later life. And the real worry as well is I think this is a societal problem where I'm afraid the leaders have not taken these things forward and taken them seriously as being a given that we should have. And it does reach within the NHS in that respect as well, is it used to get free school milk, all those sorts of things, because they realised many years ago that there were lots of families who couldn't afford to give their children, you know, balanced diets and all that kind of thing for all of those socio-economic issues, and therefore the state provided free school meals, or provided a hot meal for every child to be able to have that kind of thing, because they realised that children's development was impacted significantly at an early age, and that includes obviously teeth and everything else, through calcium intake and all those sorts of things, through fresh fruit, all those sorts of things. And we've just seen that being rolled back over the years in effect, really, where you are going to start to see some of those endemic health issues that we had many, many years ago, like rickets and things like that, where you have stunted growth, where you have limb deforms and all that sort of stuff, because that early intervention and care is not being either given at an earlier opportunity or has not been sustained through people's early life. And that therefore will have an impact further on through either the NHS or an impact for people's life chances and opportunities. And also, I think the real concern as well, which we've seen, is the amount of people who, because of the fact that they can't seem to access NHS dental services, are actually doing their own dental care themselves. I certainly know, I worked with somebody a number of years ago who said he actually used to do his own teeth extractions with pliers. Now, I can't even think of anything quite as abhorrent as that, apart from clearly we know how much pain people have when they do have a toothache or whatever the scenario is. But he said because he couldn't afford to have extractions, he used to actually do it himself, as I say, with a pair of pliers. So I think the fact that we've gone to this situation of extremes clearly is a real worry for the future, and I really support this motion, and I hope that the government wake up and actually do something about it.
Thank you, Councillor Kyrle. Councillor Kinloch.
It's quite nice to have two health motions on a council agenda. Toothache and tooth decay is a major cause of ill health. It causes things, abscesses, it leads to malnutrition, it leads to infections of heart valves, it leads to endocarditis. We are seeing mouth cancers and throat cancers, quite often associated with smoking, being picked up so much later. And what I'm finding with lack of access to NHS dental care is that we are not receiving, people are getting delays in treatment, which means we're not able to treat them as easily, which means they're going through major surgery, going through having much worse health outcomes because of malnutrition, particularly in our elderly population, particularly in our paediatric population, and particularly in our vulnerable population, our people that aren't rich, that can't afford private healthcare or private dental treatment, that can't afford to travel 30, 40 miles to go and receive these care. And actually, what is the vulnerable populations that are missing out. And this is why I support this motion, because actually we need to support our local residents, our local vulnerable residents, in being able to access what is essential care for their health now and in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with Councillor Kinloch. this again is another well-written motion, full of detail and full of clear investigative work that's gone on to produce it, and I welcome it. Dentistry's changed over the years. When I was a kid, which was a few years ago, we still had our teeth removed by gas. And if any of you were in the room that faced that horrible prospect of having a gas mask put over your face in order to have your teeth taken out, will appreciate that today dentistry is painless. It really is. You get an injection, it freezes, they take your wisdom tooth out or whatever, or take a bad tooth out, and you wake up and there's no, you know, you're awake all the time, but the pain goes, the freezing goes, and there's no issue. There's nothing to be afraid of about going to the dentist. Unlike the late 50s and early 60s when it could be quite painful. I grew up with a fear of dentistry, and I'm fortunate that my teeth managed to get through that period to the point where I actually go part private for my dentistry, and I guess I'm one of the lucky 38% that went actually to the dentist recently and got a clean bill of health. But this is a really serious subject. We've heard from one councillor that works in the NHS, the dangers of not having a thorough and proper service for dentistry. And it's not the NHS's fault by any stretch of the imagination. There just isn't enough support to get dentists into the NHS system, so that people that really can't afford regular dentistry miss out on that opportunity and are facing these health issues that are associated, which Councillor Kyrle has mentioned. So I fully support this motion again, because it really is a serious subject.
Councillor Corben.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I remember being in pain going to the dentist. I seem to remember as well we were incentivised to, when we went, if we were good, that we actually got a lolly at the end of it, which to be honest seems just a way of creating a later demand for us to go back and have the same teeth filled. I was just going to make a point, absolutely the same as others have done much more eloquently about the ticking time bomb that it does keep. But I wanted to raise as well an issue that was brought up on the doorstep with an elderly gentleman, 80 plus years old, 85 years old, who had lost his wife, and the NHS dentist system just seemed to let him down completely, and he was completely at his wit's end with painful teeth. His wife had died, and he had missed his appointment. And the rules are so tight around people going to see the dentist, Mr. Mayor, that because he didn't manage to go and see the dentist within a period of time, and I forget what it was, 12 months, his place was actually was taken. So he then phoned up and tried to book the appointment when he was in a better space to do that, and he wasn't able to do so. And I think just the whole system of NHS dentistry is far different to when I was getting my lollipop 50 odd years ago. My teeth survived as well, Councillor Holmes, thankfully. But I'm in a position that I'm able to have a private dentist. Not everybody is, and that gentleman sticks in my mind. That he was in great pain because of a system that the government have overseen. So absolutely, again, a really important motion for us to add any influence that we can to the debate. Thank you.
I just wanted to add, actually, another group that are being failed by the NHS system are people that serve in the forces. They join up, all their records are taken on by whichever group they are, the Navy, the Army, whatever. So they all come out of dentists that they've been in. Once they leave or are discharged, whatever, they can't then get back in the NHS. So they're absolutely left to try and get some sort of dental treatment there, and I think it's a massive flaw. And the other thing is, We need to be getting the government to actually support our dentists. It's not really a case of not having dentists. I've lost 2 dentists to Australia in the last 7 months. They seem to come in, get qualified, and then they're offered more money in a much nicer place, so they disappear. So, yeah, 2 dentists from my practice in the last 7 months have gone to Australia. We definitely need to do more. That once we've got them through the dentistry up and running, we need to be able to keep hold of them.
Councillor Pretty.
Right, I'll try again this time. Yeah, I'm one of the fortunate ones that can afford to have private dentistry. But I sit there sometimes in the waiting room looking at the charges on the wall, and you then compare. I did a comparison to the dental contract online, and it's no small wonder we have no NHS services. The amount that the NHS dentistry are paid for the services are so poor by comparison that why would anybody offer NHS services at those rates? The service needs to be fully and properly funded. Otherwise, as Councillor Craig says, we will just continue to either lose them to private sector or we lose them completely. And as others have said, you have your mouth checked, your throat checked for cancer, etc. It's vital that these services are fully and properly funded, and sooner rather than later. Otherwise, we're going to have a nation of severely, I was going to say, disabled, individuals with difficulties in terms of oral and mouth problems. Sorry, it's no good. I think I've made the point I'm trying to make. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pretty. Councillor Asman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I must call myself very lucky indeed, because I'm one of the few that do have an NHS dentist. Having said that, like much in this day and age, you've got to know the rules. You've got to know the rules. You've got to know how to work the system. I missed one appointment. I had told them about it, and it was likely that I'd miss a second appointment. But again, I cancelled the appointment. But then I was told, as I'd missed 2 appointments in 2 years, it might be that I would be crossed off the NHS list. So it's a minefield out there, but as I say, I suppose at the end of the day, I'm lucky that I have got an NHS dentist, but at times it doesn't feel very much like it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Asman. Councillor Dedhia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I have had privilege of working as an NHS dentist for past 15 years. And during that time, thank you. And during that time, often after introductions, the questions were, are you taking on NHS patients? I used to say yes, but in past few years, unfortunately, the answer has often been no. During this whole time, I have never seen such a steep decline in availability of NHS dental appointment and NHS dentists as seen since 2020 under this Conservative government. Also, as deluded by my fellow councillors through their own experiences, the lack of access to a dentist is affecting oral and general health of our residents, and the strain for paying private dentistry during this cost of living crisis as well. Often people affected are vulnerable people, people from low socioeconomic background, or ex-armed forces, as mentioned by Councillor Craig as well. And as Councillor Asman mentioned, you almost need to know how to play the system to gain that appointment on National Health Service dentist, and it shouldn't be that difficult as well. The latest report from the government shows an increase in 83% of hospital admissions of children with the 2 decade from previous year. And as Councillor Jarvis mentioned, nearly 48% of children in Hampshire haven't visited dentist in past year. So there is some correlation there as well. This might be due to lack of funding by this Conservative government, because it doesn't seem too high on priority, and poor National Health Service contract for providers, that's dentists to provide National Health Service, and therefore, as Councillor Craig mentioned, most of the dentists are turning away either to Australia or to privately as well. Therefore, I am really thankful of Councillor Jarvis to bring this motion forward and wholly support the motion to voice our concerns to this government and make recommendation in order to improve the oral health and general health of local residents.
Thank you, Councillor Dedhia. We now move to the vote. Could I have those in favour? And against? And any abstentions?
That is carried, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. We now move on to the motion on the One Horton Heath development. Councillor Tidridge.
That one. Can you hear me now? Is that working? Ah. No? Oh, there we go. Thank you.
You could use the microphone on stand there.
No, we're okay. I'd start off with a big thank you to Michelle for lending me her microphone, and a big thank you for Steve Broomfield for volunteering to second this motion. It was originally due to be seconded by Councillor Parker-Jones, who's unfortunately unwell. On the 22nd of June, Horton Heath Development Management Committee met. I was concerned to see that attached to one of the papers was a viability assessment for V23-95347, stating that the scheme was fundamentally unviable, that particular part of One Horton Heath, even if the Section 106 affordable housing requirement was to be dropped. I was really concerned about this, so I went on to ask the CFO and whether the whole of One Horton Heath was due to come to Ordnance Resources, and I was informed on the 3rd of July that it would come in October, and from there on to Cabinet. I was also verbally assured that I shouldn't be concerned about the viability assessment, as that was based on private developer standards regarding viability. On 19th of October, a report was considered by Audit and Resources. It showed that costs for this project had risen to 320.9 million, 148 million of which have been spent to date. Servicing the debt for this project is costing the council £326,330 per month, and so this will be expected to rise. The report showed no forecast to projected income, as this was apparently work in progress. I was advised in the meeting to look at previous Cabinet papers, so I did, and I found them in Appendix B of a paper from December 2021's Cabinet. In September 2020, based on 2,500 dwellings, the scheme was expected to cost 181.4 million. Revenue was expected to be 221.2 million. In December 21, based on 2,500 dwellings, the scheme was expected to cost 232.9 million. Revenue was expected to be 242 million. So it's now expected to cost nearly a third more than forecasted in 2021. If I apply 242 million revenue to costs of 320.9 million, that appears to be showing a potential loss of over 80 million. I've done some very quick calculations based on the information that the leader shared in his introduction tonight for 2,850 houses. If I increase that 242 million pro rata, that still only gives a revenue of 275.88 million. That's still 45 million short of the expected cost for the project. If we go all the way to 3,000 dwellings, that still only gives a loss of 30.5 million potentially. So this council is spending £326,330 every month for a project where it may make a significant loss. This is not easing my concerns expressed in the summer about the financial viability of the scheme. I asked at a recent briefing on the project whether the revenue forecast was available, and I was informed it was unlikely to be this side of Christmas, and that briefing barely touched on the scheme's financial position. Let's go back to Cabinet in October. Despite having no updated revenue data, no revised MPV or IRR calculations, the Cabinet approved capital budgets of £719,000, £950,000 and £300,000. I did ask if Cabinet members felt that they had sufficient information for taking a decision at the start of that meeting. I'm not calling into question whether EBC has met its own rules, ticked the right boxes, applied its own processes. I am calling into question how seriously this council is taking what appears to be a terrifying financial risk arising from this project. I'm calling for an independent review because I cannot see any other way that this state of affairs will be addressed. Yes, Audit and Resources have asked for more visibility of this project, but I don't think that's going to be enough. And it's not just the costs directly. The financial position of the applicant is not material to a planning decision. The One Horton Heath project cites delays with planning as a cost factor. I don't want to see Eastleigh joining Woking and Birmingham. I hope that this council will agree to an independent review. A scheme costing nearly a third more than 2 years ago, with potential losses of between 30 to 80 million, already costing this council £326,000 per month. I can't be the only member who feels that this needs additional scrutiny urgently. Surely it's the only responsible way forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Tidridge. Councillor Broomfield, do you want to speak now or do you want to reserve your position?
I'll reserve the right to speak. Thank you.
Anybody, any debate? Councillor Corben.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's really quite difficult to follow along, to be honest, with so many numbers being bandied about. I don't recognise the numbers. I don't recognise the discussion and the debate that we're trying to the motion is trying to bring forward. The fact is that One Horton Heath is a major project. It's a very important project for Eastleigh Borough Council, and the one thing that this motion is proposing is delay. And I'm afraid, from my point of view, building houses and building, more importantly, homes and a sustainable community is far more important. We can be talking about this forever. I'm certainly happy, as Deputy Leader and Cabinet Member, to have enough information to make the decisions that I've made. And going forward, the important thing to remember is that 2021, 2020, 2019, when we were starting to talk about the numbers, it was accepted that this development would not work in the private sector. It needed the council to come in, and more importantly, it needed the council to come in and actually build some homes and build the sort of infrastructure that our residents need. Anybody that's got a child in their 20s, in their 30s that are still living at home, any people looking to downsize, anyone looking to that is currently trapped in a home where they need to get out, they desperately need a home, and they desperately need. We all desperately need the housing market to improve. So I'm afraid I can't agree with the motion this evening, and I will certainly be voting against. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was pleased to see on a recent tour that One Horton Heath is progressing on the ground. I wasn't just pleased because I look very good in high-vis yellow, but actually because getting on with the job of building homes is an economic and moral imperative. So this motion, as far as I can see, is not a constructive proposition, and dare I say it wasn't supposed to be. It doesn't lay out what the terms of reference for a review would be, and so the charitable question would be, well, what are we even voting for? Well, I tell you what I think we'd be voting for. We'd be voting for dither, and we'd be voting for delay. And we'd be voting for yet more obstruction of any meaningful action on the housing crisis, a crisis that is destroying the social and economic security of our younger people, future generations, and all those who are right now being pushed into unsuitable and often unsanitary housing. As Councillor Corben alludes to, the planning system defines commercial viability as roughly 20 to 30% return. And Eastleigh's rightly decided that most of the profits on One Horton Heath will go into building a better community, and I think it's right that we do so. At the end of this build, we will have a sizable ongoing income from rental stock, both commercial and residential, over £1 billion worth of assets. That is not in anyone's book a loss. And I think it's actually really hard to overstate the sheer anger of younger people about the position that successive governments and this incessant anti-housing lobby have allowed us to get into. House prices versus income have not been this bad in over a century. Households cannot form, families cannot start, and we face the imminent prospect of a generation of pensioners living in private rented housing or saddled with mortgages well into their old age. If the NHS and social care are struggling now, by the time I need them in my old age, this crisis will have destroyed them. In Eastleigh, we have a business case. We have planning permission. And as we heard earlier from Council House, we have had outside scrutiny from our peers in the LGA. We have a solid and workable plan, and now is the time to execute on it. We don't need an ill-defined review. We don't need dither and delay. We need these homes, and we need them yesterday.
Thank you, Councillor Gomer. Councillor Bicknell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I fully endorse what Councillor Gomer and Councillor Corben have already said, and I welcome the comments from Councillor Gomer on the actual finances, because it means I don't have to address it. I won't be supporting this motion because, as it's all about delay. Delay from the independents who are actually against it and have been full stop, and it'd be further delay from Councillor Broomfield because, being a Conservative, he's against house building anyway, and this scheme and the like. This scheme is actually what local councils should be doing up and down the country, and what you're actually seeing here is a major housing project that could be anywhere in the country by Barris or Bovis, but it's being played out in the public sector. You're seeing numbers that they keep secret, and you're seeing them for the first time, and basically people are scared. This is local government being the solution rather than solving the problems of government. And that, and we don't want delay because delay adds costs. The independent review is further cost, and actually wasn't the motion about costs. I won't be supporting the motion. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bicknell. Councillor Craig.
It's quite funny, somebody that doesn't usually speaking on lots today. Just to say, I won't be supporting this. I think our officers have done an amazing job in putting on lots of workshops. We've had so many different things that we can go and scrutinise. And we've had all the experience, all the numbers, everything all chucked at us. And I think, if you attend these meetings and you have questions, ask them there where the professionals are to give you that advice and those answers. I think it's a real shame because I think we've scrutinised this very well. We've had ample opportunity to ask any questions at so many different workshops that I won't be supporting this.
Thank you. Councillor Holes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I won't be supporting this either. Recently, there was a TV interview which Councillor House took part in, and Councillor Broomfield. Councillor Broomfield, during that interview, said that he had asked many questions and he wasn't getting any answers. I'm chairman of the Audit Committee, and we have been through this over the period that it's been in place deeply, and we've regularly had items on our agenda about this. Councillor Broomfield has attended several of those meetings. I always give him the opportunity to speak, and he's never once asked a single question. So, I was a bit disappointed with that interview, I have to say. The reason why I can't support this, though, is because I believe that the audit trail is thorough, and it is doing its job, and it will continue to do its job on this. And as a result, we are getting not just new housing, but in a way that is unheard of across the country. It is the largest scheme, I believe, of its type in the whole country. The green energy side of it is what we should be shouting from the rooftops, not the fact that we desperately need these new houses for our young people, as Councillor Gomer's mentioned. And any further delay, any extra delays, just make it harder to deliver. And of course, we're putting in the infrastructure up front, which is why private developers don't really want to know about this way of doing business, because they wouldn't be able to afford to put that infrastructure in up front. If you've been fortunate enough, like me, to go over there and see the site, you'll see streams coming back to life. You'll see ponds with endangered species being protected. You'll see a navigable country strip for the animals to safely navigate across the site. You'll see the solar panel farm that's going to be attached to the site. You see the boreholes being dug, well over 200 of them. All of those are creating a green example of how we should be building houses across this country in the future. And that is what should be shouted from the rooftops. The bat protection and all of those things. It's wonderful what's going on over there. But the bottom line is we have to deliver this. It has to be achieved. And we need to avoid unnecessary or lengthy delays of our own making if we're comfortable with the audit trail, which I am. So I won't be supporting this. The only other thing I would say, it would have been very, very helpful, in like the previous two motions, if all those figures had been written down as part of this motion, so as Councillor Corben said, we could have followed it with greater ease. Thank you.
Councillor Beer.
I had a reasonable amount of work done on a house in about 2019, and the builder, I know that his costs increasing hugely throughout the time I was building, to a point he stopped providing quotes for anyone else in the area because all the costs increased so much. So I'm not particularly surprised costs have increased. I will echo some of my other colleagues when they say that obviously the numbers aren't in here. I guess this motion is about cost. I sit on the audit committee. I think everything has been laid out pretty clearly for us, and we've been given appropriate financial recommendations that everything's been accounted for. I don't really understand what this is for. I just see this as delay. I see we've had outside scrutiny, we've had internal scrutiny. I don't really get what this is for. And that hasn't been laid out in the 30 words of the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Beer. Anyone else? Councillor Caws.
Just to say that I will be supporting this motion because I feel that it is about costs, but where are the answers? Councillor Tidridge is talking about costs v revenue, and it doesn't seem to be adding up, and no one is saying anything about those figures. It just, to me, seems like a lot of heads being buried in sand, and I'm not convinced that this is a viable endeavour for the council. And at the beginning, you were talking, Leader, about not wanting to be another bankrupt council, and it just seems like going ahead with this project could be risking that. Thank you.
Councillor Broomfield, do you want to speak now?
Thank you. Yes, as I wasn't expecting to be seconding this motion, I haven't prepared much, but just picking up on a few things that were said. Quite a lot of comments about the housing crisis and the need for housing to match the shortfall between house prices over income that Councillor Gomer mentioned, which sits badly with the decision to remove the affordable and starter homes from the first tranche of house building earlier this year, which was disappointing. Councillor Hall's questions why I didn't ask questions myself at A&R. If he thinks I don't talk to Councillor Tidridge before and after, and indeed during the meeting, well, obviously I do. And there are other places and other committees where questions can and are asked and sometimes answered. My concern, obviously it matches what Councillor Tidridge has put. Not against building projects, I'm not against building homes, we need homes, we know that, but this project is overrunning in terms of time, and we mentioned the housing crisis. Well, again, we're not helping it by every time we turn around, there seems to be yet another delay to the process. The houses which were due in the spring of next year won't start being delivered until the spring of 2025, and that project for 381 houses will run through to 2027. So we're not providing houses very quickly. And I think back to what one of the bosses of One Horton Heath said the first time I went to a meeting with him, when he said it was obvious that EC had bitten off more than they can chew. And I think from there on, it's been a game of catch up, which isn't catching up, and putting more and more money into trying to catch up and not providing anything at the end of it. Now, if in 15 years' time, I was going to say I'm still sitting here, in 15 years' time I might not be sitting anywhere, but if in 15 years' time there was a wonderful housing estate with the village centre and the school and all the rest of it, I will be the first, if I'm around, to say, I'm sorry, I got it wrong. But I strongly doubt it will be. I think this project suffers from overreach and overrun, and I just think that it's about time bringing people into A&R as outsiders it's a start, but I think this needs a proper root and branch, top to bottom, look at it to assess the viability, the ongoing viability, and where any changes ought to be made in the process. So I will obviously, I'm seconding it, I will obviously be supporting this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Broomfield. Councillor Heath. Councillor House.
Councillor Heath. Who's he? Who's he? What a lot of doom and gloom from the three at the back. First, some positives. Well, actually, lots of positives. I think we've got Councillor Holmes' point, some of the best bat hotels in the country. They're absolutely magnificent. I can also vouch that Councillor Gomer does look really good in high-vis yellow. He did say he'd rather look good in high-vis pink, but we're trying to organise that for a future time, Richard. I'm sure we can find the PPE to make that work. It is worth just going back to the start of this project, which was pre-COVID. It was pre-Trussonomics, pre-inflation, pre-hyperinflation, and pre a massive increase in construction costs. And we intervened to bring forward a housing site the private sector had said couldn't be delivered with 22% margins. And that's our role as a local authority, to do the things that can work, but not if they have to be based on 22% profit. Our role is not to fund the chairman's yacht for Barrett or Taylor Wimpey or Persimmon or whoever. Our role is to deliver a high quality housing scheme built with better space standards, built with better energy standards, better biodiversity standards, better almost everything standards that will be delivered by the private sector, and still more than break even. If we go back to some of the early financial papers for One Horton Heath, at that time we were projecting, and these were very early figures, that no, we wouldn't make 22%, but we could probably make 8 or 9%. And that was still building in lots and lots of contingencies. And the figures today, of course they have got a bit worse, but on the scale of the project, they're totally manageable. And the figures that will go to A&R and will go to Cabinet in December will demonstrate that. I've seen many of these figures. We've been working with them as a team over the course of many months, many years, and I have every confidence in our highly professional finance and property teams that are dealing with this project on a week-by-week, month-by-month basis. And I do kind of regret that, pretty well as usual, the independent group and Conservative, find any opportunity to knock housing. It's a different form of NIMBYism that says that whatever site we bring forward, they don't like. They'd rather not do it. But it's just like when there was a Conservative group here, the line then was always, no, we don't like that site, we much prefer different ones. Then you ask them which ones, and they'd say, I don't know, just not that one. And that's exactly what we've got from the three at the back. They just want it somewhere else because they're NIMBYs. And that's the real position here, Mr. Mayor. And I'm frankly more than disappointed by that. I really am. Scrutiny. Yes, the Audit and Resources Committee has looked at this on a regular basis. Now, it is also the case, I was at the last meeting and Councillor Broomfield didn't ask a question. And so I'm rather surprised that he told the BBC that he asked a question because, well, he didn't, did he? That's a matter of fact and a matter of record. But we've been working on this for a very long time. The business case is robust. In some ways, the business case might be too robust, but we'll come to that a bit later during the cycle. We've looked very carefully at the balance of tenures on the site to meet housing need. That does reflect that at the moment, the housing market for sale properties isn't as strong as it was a couple of years ago, before Trussonomics and COVID. And we've made some minor adjustments as part of the business case to increase the number of homes for rent, where the business case works even with Trussonomics, with the expectation that the property market will perform as it always does over the course of years to outpace the value of money over a long business period. But even within the short term, the project works. It wouldn't work for Barrett's. It wouldn't work for Taylor Wimpey. It wouldn't work for Persimmon. And I'm not knocking any of those businesses. They are there to do something really useful in the housing market, but not the stuff that we're capable of doing as a local authority, and that's something we should be proud of. Our model is very different. Our model is about self-delivery. We're letting contracts ourselves. That changes the financial dynamics of the scheme quite markedly, and it will do over time. The balance of tenures, the balance of sizes of property, the balance of phasing of what we do when, all contribute to the long-term business case of the project. And I have every confidence in the work that's gone on over the past period and the report that will come to committee in December that makes that case, and still means that we can deliver on higher space standards, on 50% green space, on renewable energy through ground source heat pumps, with EV charging points for all homes, with a biodiversity net gain that is truly enormous compared to what was there before. All these things that really matter, and with infrastructure first. So that's the point about costs being up front, because we are able to do things differently from the private sector. The infrastructure up front does cost more money. And the reason the volume builders don't do it is because it costs them more money, and their motive is only about profit. That's exactly what their motive should be. They're looking to pay their shareholders. Our shareholders are the 130,000 residents of our borough, and they demand something better for our borough. They demand that we finish the road between Burnett's Lane and Allington Lane before we start building houses, and that's what we're doing. That road will be open next summer. There's some tarmac on the ground now. Other than the bridging work, the road is materially complete in terms of the core activity. And that's exactly as it should be. We are in continued discussion about how we make the phasing work so that we don't, and I look at what's happened in Borley Green with volume developers, we don't put the builders' compounds where the children's play areas are meant to be. We put them somewhere else so we can put the play areas in with the houses and get them opened, because it matters. And it's the same with the school, it's the same with the local centre, it's the same with all the rest of the community infrastructure and green space. Steve Holes mentioned that we're improving stream quality. When I first walked the site at 1 Horton Heath a few years back, there was a bogged down stream around Quabley Pond that was a disgrace. There's now free-flowing water there. That's the kind of thing we can do that a volume builder wouldn't do. They do it later, at the end of the project, if at all. So this stuff matters. It really does. So yeah, this is taking a bit longer than we originally expected it to. I'd rather take a bit longer and get it right, because we are running a very different model from the model that's run by volume developers. Scrutiny again. Yes, we've brought peers in from elsewhere in local government. The peer review team that I mentioned earlier on was carefully constructed so that they were able to give independent scrutiny of 1 Horton Heath. We selected the cast of staff that were part of that review for that purpose. It included the commercial director from Cornwall Council, who's responsible for regeneration projects across Cornwall, and it's his day job to do this stuff. That's why he was invited. We've had critical friends of the project from day one who've been brought in as specialists in housing to be able to test and challenge what we're doing. Both our internal and our external auditors have been involved as a matter of course and will continue to be so. So there is no shortage of scrutiny, or maybe apart from Councillor Broomfield who doesn't ask questions. So the answers are already there. They're written into this plan and we're doing it. And it would just create delay. It would just create more costs if we have a pause and an independent review when we've already got independent reviews of the project. Now, I'm very proud of One Horton Heath. We are doing stuff that many other councils don't do because they don't have the ambition to improve the quality of life for local residents that we do. So many councils nowadays are so dumbed down by the financial crisis, they just deliver statutory services at a bare minimum. We've maintained our finances so that we can do more than that, and that's something we can all collectively be proud of and say to our residents as a matter of course. And One Horton Heath is going to be an exemplar scheme. It already is an exemplar scheme on the ground, and it will be even more so when homes are built and occupied by residents, including many who will be able to live in a rented home they wouldn't otherwise have been able to get, be it social rent, be it affordable rent, or be it home rent on the open market that then have the ability to buy later when they're able to, and not the disgrace of people in their 30s and 40s in rented home on 6-month assured short-hold tenancies they could get kicked out of next month. That's the disgrace of housing in this country. That's why we're doing something different, and that's why we should throw out this motion and get on with building our homes.
Thank you, Councillor House. Councillor Tidridge, do you want to respond?
Yes, thank you. I welcome actually everybody that's made comments. It's been really useful hearing your views. I would like to go back to the premise of why I'm asking for a review. It's precisely because I didn't see a revised business case. There isn't a revised business case ready yet. There wasn't a revised business case available in October. It's that business case that I'd really like to see, because this isn't shareholder value we're talking about. This is public money, and yeah, we definitely need houses. We need a lot of houses. There's a lot to commend the One Horton Heath site, but I just want to get my head round a scheme which is costing £326,330 every month. Will apparently, over the full 50 years, not necessarily make a profit, will potentially make a loss, will make a large loss. And I'd just like us to be more open, more transparent, and talk about this as opposed to simply referring to how fantastic the scheme is in terms of delivery. I'm sure it is, but I want to see the numbers. We can build amazing stuff, but it costs money. And the question in my mind is whether or not this council can afford to do that. But I do very much welcome everybody's comments, and I certainly do welcome the motion in the Constitution earlier that A&R will be given the independent members. I think that's certainly going to help out with this kind of issue. But thank you very much indeed, everybody, for at least thinking about the finances for One Horton Heath tonight. That's very much my objective for putting this motion forward, and I appreciate you spending the time considering that.
Thank you, Councillor Tidridge. I think this now moves to a vote. Could we have all those in favour of the motion? Those against? Thank you. Any abstentions?
That's lost, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. We now move to Councillors' questions. These are found in your agenda packs. There's a total of 30 minutes for questions. Councillors, you're entitled to one supplementary question, but I urge you to keep this succinct. That means quick. In Councillor Parker-Jones' absence, she will be sent an email response to the questions she's put, which are questions 1, 4 and 5. So we start with question 2. Councillor Tidridge, would you put your question to Councillor House?
I'm just getting up the wording, thank you. Thank you. Allotments at Brickkiln Lane off Bowlake Gardens in Bishopstoke are unusable and have been subjected to vandalism and antisocial behaviour incidents. They were due to be transferred from the developer to Eastleigh Borough Council and then on to Bishopstoke Parish Council as part of the Bowlake Gardens development's planning conditions. The development has been completed and houses occupied for over 3 years, yet the allotments remain unusable. The local area committee for Bishopstoke, Ferrick and Horton Heath has requested updates from the council frequently, but no plan has been shared showing when the transfer will take place or how the developer is being held to account. Please, the Cabinet Member with responsibility for planning, please update members with proposed actions and deadlines for delivery. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I very much feel for Councillor Tidridge on this one. So perhaps unlike the last one, I think we're in basic agreement. The Section 106 obligation to Bowlake Gardens for transferring of land relates to a number of component parts. I'm sure that Councillor Tidridge knows all this, but for the rest of you don't. Allotments and allotment buildings, a small area of public open space, the play area, and the adjoining woodlands. So while the site has been laid out and the land is technically available for transfer, delays have been experienced more recently as the developer has been claiming they need building control approval for some work on the allotment building, and work commissioned to survey the suitability of the drainage that was laid beneath the play area and public open space. Planning enforcement are working with Vistry at the moment to address the drainage matter, whilst Vistry have advised an order has been placed for the allotment building works and they are waiting for dates from the contractor. It's a sorry tale. You could repeat this in Borley Gardens, you could repeat it in all sorts of sites, Taylor Wimpey at Bursledon. To expedite the transfer, we're likely to split the transfer so that the allotments and building can be transferred in advance of the public open space play area, which will require remedial work to the drainage. A contributing factor to the delay has been the capacity of our own internal assets transfer team historically to move a large number of asset transfers forward. However, in recent months, with the introduction of additional resources, we've seen positive progress in a number of asset transfer sites, but clearly not this one. With an expansion of resources in the Section 106 monitoring team, we've also been proactive in identifying delays in Section 106 obligations being met, and staff are in the process of formally writing to a number of developers, including this one, setting a 3-week timescale to move certain obligations forward. Failure to act on this is the critical point, failure to act on this will see files passed to our legal team to commence legal action on enforcement. Now, beyond this site, Jin's question also gives me the opportunity to comment in the round on asset transfers and the planning process, as the system has clearly broken down with the late delivery of infrastructure on so many sites around the borough that have let down local communities, both new and old. So I've asked staff to bring forward proposals to look at future planning agreements afresh, giving consideration to earlier infrastructure delivery timed against housing delivery, speedier transfers to local councils written into planning agreements, and improved reporting to local area committees and to parish and town councils on each of these processes. We are making it work on our own sites, so we really should be capable of making it work on the wider system. So I thank Councillor Tidridge for her question.
Councillor Tidridge, do you have a supplementary question?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Councillor, we move on to question 3, which is Councillor Broomfield. Councillor Broomfield, could you put in your question?
Thank you. Quite simply, could the leader confirm that the One Holland Heath project has requisitioned drainage works that the scheme requires? Particularly, I'm thinking of the sewage running through the Ellington Lane Fair Oak Road junction and subsequently along Fair Oak Road as it goes towards Eastleigh and obviously to Sandy Lane junction. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Broomfield, would you like to ask a supplementary?
No, I would just say splendid.
Anyway, very well done, all very quick, thank you. We now move to the resolved items for noting and questions only. Councillor House, would you please move that the items listed at section 17 of the agenda be placed before the council for noting and questions?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll move all of them in one go. Thank you.
Is there a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Corben. Any questions? No. All those in favour? All those against? Any abstentions?
Carried, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillors, thank you. This now concludes the meeting. The next meeting will take place on Monday, the 26th of February, back here at the Point. I wish you all a good evening. Have a wonderful festive season. Merry Christmas. Yes, I said it's all written down here. Have a wonderful Christmas season.